What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. I am your host tonight, Spencer, with a familiar face you've probably seen a few times on our channel now, Jim from the Fantasy for the Ages podcast. I'll have all his stuff linked below, so be sure to check out his podcast and Twitter and all that stuff. We are gathered here today for a very impromptu episode, as Jim has very quickly finished the Night Angel Trilogy over the last, I think, week or so.
Yep, just this past week.
Yeah. Which many of you may know is in my top 3 favorite fantasy series of all time, and has been one that I reread usually once a year or so. So naturally, when I found out that Jim was reading these, I had to quickly get him on the podcast to pick his brain on this amazing trilogy. There's not really a plan here, honestly. I kind of cobbled together some notes at the last minute when we decided to do this recording. So it may be a little more free form than normal. But honestly, lately, those have turned out to be some of our best content. So maybe this is a sign of changes to come for the channel. If you enjoy this content, please be sure to hit all the YouTube buttons, like, subscribe, and hit that pesky little bell icon so that your phone vibrates every time we make a new video. Every time you hit those buttons, another Night Angel gets their wings. So do the right thing. That was stupid.
Nah, it works. It works. The Night Angel algorithm. Yes.
You can also follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy to keep up with everything we're reading and our unpopular opinions. With all that out of the way, let's talk about what we've been reading and get chatting about the Night Angel Trilogy by Brent Weeks. So Jim, you've been on the channel a few times now. We've kind of done the introduction thing for you, and I am so out of focus. Sorry, guys. I
Wow,
don't know.
you're in a haze,
I know.
Spencer. You're in a haze.
It's the shadows.
You're back. Okay.
Yeah. It's gone for a minute. But yeah, so you've been on a few times. You've talked about your podcast. Do you want to talk real quick about maybe where people can follow you, your Twitter handles and all that?
Yeah, definitely. Look for us anywhere you get audio podcasts. You can find us, Fantasy for the Ages. And then we're very active on Twitter. We kind of are on Facebook and Instagram. We put our drink recipes, but Twitter's really where you can connect. And of course, there's Discord. We've got a great Discord server with lots of people who love fantasy and sci-fi interacting all the time with us.
They do.
Spencer, do you guys have Discord yet? I know you've talked about it.
It is Gabe's responsibility, and he has not done it yet. So I'm waiting.
We'll join you when you're there.
I know.
For sure.
I know. Speaking of drink recipes and stuff, what are you drinking tonight? Do you have anything over there?
I do. It's just a nice, easy day. I've been drinking wine most of the afternoon and evening. Not a lot, because I got to be able to talk coherently. But I started out with a blackberry wine, which was just sweet and delicious. But I moved on to something from a local winery up here, Pomeroy Cellars. So I can't even tell you really what it is. It's just called Lucia number 47. It's a blend.
Okay. Nice.
Cabernet Sauvignon and I think some Pinot Noir, and they blended together. It's good. It's heavy. It's tasty.
Nice. I was reading a fantasy short story last night where they talked about apple wine, and I was like, that sounds good. I wonder if it's good. I wonder if it just sounds good in theory, or if apple wine would actually be good, or I don't know. Or if it's even a real.
They make apple brandy. That's pretty similar, right?
Okay, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, you talk about short story that you read. I was at a wine event last night at that place where I bought this bottle of wine. Because it's here in Washington. It's about 25 minutes from my house. And they had a dinner, a 5-course meal, and they paired it with wine. You get seated. My wife and we got seated at a table. And right next to us was a couple where, we're talking, what do you do? She writes science fiction, short stories. So we
Oh,
talked
wow.
about our podcast. She
Oh my
told me
gosh.
about her stuff, and she's got a short story. I just looked it up. It's pretty good, called Vertical Flight, which
Okay.
is a term for wine. So if you look
Okay.
it up and you find it, you heard it first from me.
Vertical flight?
Vertical Flight.
Okay.
Yep.
I will check it out for sure. Um, it's funny you mentioned trying not to drink too much on the podcast because you have to be coherent and talk. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever gotten like too tipsy on a podcast? Because I have.
Yes. Not so much that I, don't remember stuff afterwards, but yeah, there's somewhere I listen to it afterwards. I'm editing where I'm getting a little sloppier.
Yeah.
It's rare, but it's
Yeah.
happened maybe once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like I get more I guess fun, but I lose my train of thought so much. That is the worst side effect is like, oh, I have this really great point I want to make. I had this quote that I wanted to, read or whatever, and then just halfway through the thing I lose my focus and I just have to tell Gabe or whoever's on the podcast with us, I'm sorry. I don't know where I was going with that. I'll just edit that out.
So public service announcement, drink with moderation, everybody.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna drink a little too much, do it when you're at home podcasting. Okay.
Right.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So anyway, I'm just drinking Elysian Space Dust.
Oh yeah, that's good. All
I'm
right.
currently in the middle of moving. And so all of my like drink mixing things are in storage because I'm just, staying in a room. For one of my
Yeah.
friends has a room that I'm staying in the meantime. And so when I move in,
But
I
yeah,
move in this week and I
you're
can
so
finally
close.
set up
So
I can
close.
set up all my drink mixing stuff. I'm so excited. I can have real drinks again.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about what we've been reading or watching. I
Mhm.
know that you just saw something pretty exciting.
I did. Love to just mention that because it just debuted today. House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel, now is out there on HBO. If you're one of those people that lets your subscription drop when you don't need to watch anything there, now's the time to get it back. This was great. It's worthy. It's what I would be hoping for from a prequel of Great Game of Thrones. So high props for episode one.
So it was good. It was good. You
Oh
liked it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There
Okay.
was nothing in it where I went, "Oh, come on, guys, you screwed that up." No, not a moment for me. Very satisfying.
Okay. Awesome. I'm very excited. I think I'm going to watch it tonight. I was literally like minutes leading up to this podcast, within 10 minutes of you signing on with me. I was watching Barry on HBO Max. Have you seen this show?
No, I'm not even familiar with Barry.
Oh, it's so good. It's been one of my favorite shows of recent years. I'm rewatching season 2 because season 3 just came out.
Okay.
And are you familiar with like Dexter?
Yes.
So it feels like it's not quite the same thing, especially not only in plot but also in tone, but it has a lot of similarities with Dexter. It features God, what's that guy's name? Bill Hader,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he plays this guy Barry, and Barry is a mercenary. He is a basically an assassin for hire. He does a lot of jobs with like the mafia and drug
Okay.
cartels and stuff. And he gets a job in LA for an assassination. And he stumbles upon this acting class, and he sits down and he's very like kind of unhappy with his life. Like he's just doing these assassinations because it's what he's good at. He was a Marine, and he has all
Okay.
this like violent experience. And so he kind of sits in on this acting class and decides that he wants to become an actor. So he starts taking the class. He gets very involved in the acting world. So it's very kind of meta in that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and but in the meantime, he's also doing assassinations because he's like locked in with this Russian mob. And so it's both funny and very sad when these two lives of his collide. And there's a lot of moments, the show lends itself to a lot of moments where you're like, oh, they're going to find out, they're going to find out, they're going to find out, they're going to find out. And it gets very, very tense. And it's just a really fantastic show, man. I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of like really dark humor. Like there's this one scene where the one that I tell everybody about is in one of the first episodes, you just see him sitting on this couch and he's got his headset in and he's running lines for a play with one of his colleagues, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And as the camera pans out, you see that he's sitting on this couch that happens to be like on this hillside, and he's looking through a scope
Ugh.
in his sniper rifle, and he's waiting for this guy to come out of his house. So he's just running his lines, doing his acting class like through his headset with one of his friends, and then he just blows this guy's head off. And so
Man.
it's just a weird mixing of these two things, and it's very,
Yeah.
very good. It's very good. It sounds like those two things wouldn't mix, but somehow they do. They really do. So I highly recommend it. But yeah, I was watching that literally minutes leading up to this podcast we're doing here. So um yeah, anyways, anything you're reading? I know, so you obviously just finished Night Angel. Is there anything
Right,
else that
just
you
plowed through that. I'm also reading a throwback fantasy series, The Deathgate Cycle by Weiss and Hickman. I just missed it back in the day, and lots of people had recommended it to me. So now I'm into it. I'm about 45% into the first book, and I understand why people were recommending it. It's very entertaining.
Okay.
It's it's a very comfortable thing, to just kind of
Okay.
drop back into old style sword and sorcery fantasy with a good element of humor mixed into it. So I'm enjoying it. It's dwarfs, elves, dragons, it's fun stuff.
For
So
sure. Is it
yeah,
is
that's
it
going real well.
is it complicated? Because I've always wanted to start it, but I was worried about it being really complex.
I have not found it to be complicated. No, not
Okay.
compared. And knowing some of the other things you've read,
Yeah.
no, you would
Okay.
not find this complicated. Now, it's got, some mystery, some things it's unpacking over time,
Sure.
but not in the sense of, I'm not going to be able to keep track of all this. Not like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely pick it up. I don't think that they have audiobooks for that.
They do not. So
So,
this is one I'm reading on Kindle. 7 books.
oh wow. Okay, yeah, I'll
None of
definitely
them
have
are
to.
too long. So
Yeah. Um so what have I read recently? I haven't been on a reading slump, but I just haven't really I haven't really figured out what I want to read right now. I feel like I'm in the mood for something
mm,
really specific, but I just can't quite figure out what that is. And so I've been looking through my wish list, like, do I want to read that? No, I'll read that another time. Do I want to read this? No, because I'm a big mood reader. I don't really have a TBR. And so
as
like,
opposed to mine that's over
yeah,
800 books now.
yeah. And I do have a TBR with TV shows. My TV show TBR is like
Okay,
your book TBR.
got it.
But otherwise, I'm pretty much, I pretty much read, wherever the mood takes me. So I did read I think I told you I was on your podcast a couple weeks ago, and I told you
Mhm.
about the Lazarus Codex, which is kind of like this Dresden Files
Yep.
knockoff. And so I read the second book in that, and I enjoyed it a lot. I think that some people will be kind of upset, like some people will be like, this is a direct ripoff of the Dresden Files.
Dresden ripoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, and I understand that because there was some parts where I was like, okay, that's literally Susan, or that's literally Karen Murphy, or whatever. It's like the characters are all there. And so, there are some parts that are like that. But I mean, we're all out of Dresden Files, guys. There's no more for right now. We have a long we have a long wait ahead of us until we get to 12
Yeah.
months. And so, this is certainly filling that void, and it
Okay.
feels just like Dresden Files. So I enjoyed the second book a lot. And then there's this other series that I've kind of been picking at little by little, called the Buried Goddess Saga.
Hmm.
And the first book is kind of a comedy. You have like, it's almost like a buddy cop movie, or like a buddy partner movie, where you have like this very not extravagant, just this very like boisterous thief. And he's like very prideful, and he's like, I am the best thief, and he's very comical. And then you have this knight who's a little more stoic and by the book, and they have to team up for this quest. And so the first book is very funny in all the ways you would expect. But
Okay.
then there's 6 books in the series, or yeah, 6 books. And as it goes along, it gets away from the comedy quite a lot, and it goes into this big epic fantasy where you're following
Hmm.
like 6 or 7 different povs. And the stakes get bigger, like the whole world is at stake. By I just finished the 5th book, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Okay. All right.
And I've enjoyed it quite a lot. All of the characters except for one are really really enjoyable. They all are very they all have big personalities, like very unique personalities. And so
You said
it's
except for one, so that one, just screw them and enjoy the rest.
yeah, there's one that's just like, I don't know. There's one that's just not very enjoyable. But all the other ones are really fantastic. I really do think the character work with all the other ones is really great. So definitely worth a look if you're interested
Okay.
in a series that starts kind of funny, still with a good story, but it's mostly a comedy, and then it gets into more bigger epic fantasy that we all know and love. And so that's the Buried Goddess Saga, if anybody wants to check it out. And what I'm starting this next week, I think, have you heard about this Sun Eater series? Have I talked about this at
Hmm.
all?
No, I don't remember that. No.
It's kind of like it's a mix of like Red Rising and King Killer, and it's kind of like
Okay.
a big space opera. And I really love it. It would take forever to go into what the plot is, but it's it's really good. It's basically this guy who um grows up on a planet, and he grows up as a noble on this planet, and is excommunicated from his family, and so kind of goes into the stars to start his own adventure. And he gets involved in all these you know galaxy-wide conspiracies and stuff. It's really good. So
Okay.
I think I'm going to be starting the second book for that, probably on Monday. Uh,
All
is
right.
is there anything you're starting next now that you finished Night Angel?
I just my next audiobook now I downloaded since Night Angel Trilogy's done. I'm doing a one-off, the Kaiju Preservation
Oh,
Society.
I haven't
I
read this.
Oh yeah, somebody recommended it to me, and it's a great one-off, right in between, before I move into something else big. And it's quirky, it's very current because it's based in the COVID-19 pandemic. So,
Oh, is it? I didn't know
but it's
that.
not about the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's that's the context of the setting.
Okay.
And it's the first audiobook I'm going to listen to that's narrated by Will Wheaton. And he's done
Oh,
a number of things. I hear he's a good narrator, so I'm looking forward to that aspect of it too.
very cool. Very cool. Um, All right. Well, with all that out of the way, should we get into talking about your experience with the
Why
Night Angel
not?
Trilogy?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So this is your spoiler warning. We are going to be spoiling the entire series except for the novella. We're not going to talk about the novella because Jim hasn't read that. So all 3 books, we're going to be talking about them. Spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. All right. So I thought it was funny to I was telling you earlier, kind of to prepare for this episode. I think it's been about 4 months or so now since I've reread these books. And obviously after finding out you read them so fast, I didn't have time to to go and read through them all. But I did go back and I listened to our other podcast episodes. If you guys are into Night Angel, we did an episode for every single book except for the novella that's coming soon, hopefully. But we did an episode for each of the books, and they all turned out really fantastic. The first one is a little iffy because we had some guys on the podcast who didn't like the book. But for the second book and the third book, I was listening to them today and I'm like, man, I think these are some of our best episodes. So definitely go check those out if you're a Night Angel fan.
Well, you
Um,
don't have to worry today about someone being on who didn't like them because,
yeah, for sure.
man, these were fun. I
Yeah.
just thoroughly enjoyed them. That's why I got through them so fast because I just kept listening.
Yeah.
I did do the audiobook. One quirk about the audiobook I noted is that the narrator, and I'm sure it's not his fault, it's probably in the post editing, but they don't handle the shift of scenes well. So
No.
you got to be
Yeah.
really you're someplace else and it's someone else, and
Yeah.
there's no transition. It just
Yep.
and you're like, whoa, what was that? It was a little jarring in the first book, and then I got used to it, so I was ready.
Yeah, at some point, like the only way you can really differentiate scene changes is luckily Brent Weeks always starts with a character's name who is in that next scene. So if we're following Kyler way over here and we know Mama K is back in the city somewhere, it'll be talking about Kyler and then it'll be like, Mama K sat at her desk. And it's like, okay, so we're back in this other place. That's
Right.
literally the only way to
It
differentiate
really
these
is.
scenes. It's really tough. We had a number of people bring that up on the other episodes as well.
Well, I
As,
concur. Yeah. Yeah.
as especially the flashbacks. There's a couple flashbacks. I think in the first book was the biggest one where it flashes back to the exact description of a scene from earlier, like literally the same exact text. And then Brent Weeks kind of he takes that text and then he adds on to it to fill out that scene a little bit more at the end. And
Mm.
so during that, it's a huge
Yes, I
like,
remember. I was like, did I bump the
yeah,
phone? Did I jump back?
exactly.
Yeah, I
Yep.
remember what you're talking about.
Yep. And the first time I did the audiobooks, I was like, wait a minute. And like I went back and I was like, wait, no, I'm in the right space. What is going on? And yeah, it's a huge pain. So that certainly is a downfall of the audiobooks. But other than that, what did you
Man.
think of these audiobooks, man? This narrator, I love him.
Oh, he did a great job. Yeah. And brought these characters to life, which is so essential. This is a very much character driven trilogy.
Yeah.
And so you got to make these characters someone you can connect with, and that sense their personalities and their motivations. Did a really nice job.
Yeah.
Yeah, really enjoyed that aspect of it. There's so many. I mean, from Kylar to Durzo to Vi and Mama K, and you can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And how many characters that we knew by multiple names
Yeah.
over the course of the trilogy? Because there's reveals and then reveals and then reveals, and really, the plot is well designed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. These books hold a very special place in my heart. I've always been uh, a huge fan of morally gray characters and morally dark characters. There was a period of time in my life where I was a pretty morally gray person. And, during that period of time, I found these books. And at first, it was kind of this thing of like, oh, I just like the action assassin, like all this cool stuff is happening, all these fight scenes. And that's, I was probably like 16 or 17. And then when I've reread them so many times over the
Hmm.
last I don't know, more than a decade now, I guess.
You're getting old, man.
Yeah, I know, it's sad. Um, and, I've read them so many times now, and every single time I read them, I find something new to love, I find something new to appreciate. There's a ton of I don't know if you picked this up on your first read through, but there is a ton of foreshadowing and prophecies in this book that are all intertwining. And
Mhm.
if you go back and do a reread, it's like Dresden Files. It's like the Wheel of Time, where you're like, oh my gosh, this was that thing. Like, oh, it makes so much sense, and all these things are so interconnected to the point where if you kind of read through enough times and see the things that are in play, you can kind of figure out what the next book is going to be, because we have gotten announced in the last I think the last year or so that another book is on its way. Uh
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
I think Beyond the Shadows came out in maybe 2012 or 2010, somewhere around there. And so we haven't gotten a new book in like 10 years. And then he just came out. He announced it on the Legendarium podcast. And
Oh.
he's like, by the way, I'm writing another book in mid cryo. And everyone was like, what?
There's
And
more story to tell. That's
yeah,
easy. Yeah. Not
yeah.
lots to go on with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the way this ended, I'm surprised we didn't get a book, another book a lot sooner. However, he did work on after this. He worked on his Lightbringer saga
Yep.
for a long
Which is
time.
still on my TBR.
Yeah,
There were people telling me I should read that first because a lot of people claim it's better. It's a stronger work for him than Night Angel. But I'm like, well, Night Angel came out first. So
yeah,
I like to appreciate the progression of an author.
yeah.
I would always want to read their earlier work before their later.
Yeah, I think you did the right thing, because then you'll have you'll get through Lightbringer and you'll appreciate it for what it is. I like this more.
Okay.
But I do really like Lightbringer. I'm only at book 3 out of 5. I finished book 3 out of 5. Um but I think that reading this first will give you nostalgia for these characters in a way. And kind of
Okay.
going through Lightbringer, you'll see how his writing has progressed, but it's also, you can tell that it's Brent Weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, I found when I was reading Lightbringer that having read Night Angel first, I had a more of an appreciation for his writing, because I could see, you know, his style from Night Angel carry over into
Sure.
Lightbringer.
Okay.
And so yeah, I think you did the right thing.
Well, thank you. And a funny thing, I'd heard about Night Angel from other podcasts and such, but Zach actually jumped into it before I did. So
Oh,
he read the first book, and then he read like half of the second book, and then he got busy doing other stuff, and he's not finished it. I'm
oh.
how can you be one and a half books through this and not continue? He's like, no, I'll get back to it. I'm like, are
To
you out of your mind? I couldn't leave myself dangling like that.
I know. Yeah, when I first read these, I burned through all 3 back to back to back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to be fair, that second book has a rough start. That second book has a bit of a rough start until
Yep.
Vi comes around and kills Jarl.
But it's what the author did a nice job of. He's broken free.
Yeah.
He's gonna go do something different. And
Yeah.
it's time is dedicated to making a new life. I'm an herbalist.
Yeah.
I'm got a family now, and a little bit of struggle with I still need to go out and train and stuff, I need to
Yeah.
do, but I thought that was a good device Weeks uses
Yeah.
there. And almost to get us to think, yeah, this is a little boring too, so
Yeah.
that we're excited too that he needs more. We
Right.
need more. Let's
Right.
go.
You
Yeah.
know, that's a good point. And certainly after, rereading it so many times, I can appreciate that part of the book a little bit more. But every time every time I start the second book, I'm like, okay, like it'll
2.5 speed here. Okay.
yeah, I'm like it'll be slow for a little while, but the good thing is that Brent Weeks has a really great sense of humor. And so
Okay.
even though that section is slow, we still get a lot of personality from Kyler and Aline
Mm-hmm.
and Yuli. And even their kind of living the boring life a little bit, it's there's still lots of funny moments. There's still things going on. It's interesting to see this other town. That's the first time where we really get some really good world building, where
Yeah.
we see
Yeah.
another part of Mid Cryu, but it's they do things just a little bit differently, like with the earrings and all that. A little bit of world
Mhm.
building there that I
And,
appreciated.
oh, what they do with those earrings eventually. Wow. What a
um,
device.
yeah. So let's talk for a minute about well, I guess from that, maybe a good thing to jump into is uh you and I had talked a while back on one of the first times we were on a podcast together about how especially in some of this like pre 2012 fantasy, there's a lot of like Christian references. Or maybe it was when you came on for the Dresden Files
I think
episode.
it came up in a Dresden episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of kind of Christian like through lines in a lot of this earlier fantasy. And Night Angel, while it does have a lot of swearing and a lot of like pretty foul stuff that happens, there's also a lot of kind of Christian allegories and
Oh
references
man.
throughout.
I'm pretty sure it right off plagiarizes the Bible a few times
Oh
too.
yeah,
Just
definitely.
this teachings of the one God. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that God. Wait a second.
Yeah.
I've read those passages.
Right.
How'd that
Yeah.
get to mid cryu?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And they even straight up quote scripture as far as I could
Yep,
tell.
they
Yeah.
do. They do. And of course, some of the ways um uh, Drake, uh Count Drake, the way his life was changed
Yeah.
by his beliefs, and then how he says, yes, no one is so bad that they can't change,
Right.
and I mean, there's some core Christian principles that's clearly oozing through his perspective on life now, and
Definitely.
how he is just again and again willing to give Kylar unconditional love and acceptance. It's like, you
Yeah.
can't do anything so bad that I would wash my hands of you.
Oh,
And that flows from his beliefs.
yeah.
And he
Yeah.
knows how scummy he was. And he's got the one God who continues to accept him. So he's putting it into practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's cool in this line is what they do with Aline's character
Yes.
along the way, where she's trying to practice these same beliefs in her relationship with Kylar, but they're immature beliefs.
Yeah.
And to see that change, particularly when she's captured by slavers and then
Yeah.
has that time where she kills somebody, and it just hits home how naively and badly she had been judging Kylar,
Yes.
trying to make him live up to her expectations of what she thinks the one God would expect. And again,
Yeah.
my understanding of Christian faith, you've got law, you've got gospel. She was all thinking about the law,
Right.
what we have to do, and losing touch with the loving God that transforms.
Yeah.
So you see that growth.
And that's another interesting thing. That's kind of I have a quote that I want to get to from Aline, but that's another interesting through line to this whole trilogy. Is it's all about love. Everything
Yep.
that is good that happens in this trilogy springs from love. And we
Yep.
see Kyler, even though he is kind of this like dark knight kind of character, he has everything he does, as dark as it is, springs from his love of Logan, or his love of Yuli or
Yep.
Aline, and even eventually his little, but his love for Vi. And
There's a scene I think it epitomizes that with Kylar that I'd love to talk about a bit.
yeah.
And that's the when he kills Tara Grayson,
Yes. Oh
which
yes.
the whole way that scene develops, I loved it so much, I had to tell my wife about it. I talked about it to her early this morning. I'm like, she doesn't know the book. She's never going to read these books, but I
Yeah,
got to tell you about this scene
yeah,
because, he he loves Logan. This is the
yeah,
guy who's supposed to be king. This is the guy who would be the right king,
yeah,
and he loves him enough that despite how much Logan is putting honors on him and Count Drake is making him a son, and they're doing these things to pull him back from killing Tara because they know he wants to kill Tara Grayson because she deserves it.
yeah,
They're just trying to love him out of that.
yeah.
He's like, no, I love you enough
Oh,
that I'm going to
yes.
take the hit. I'm going to do what you can't do because your honor won't let you. But it needs to be done for you, for the people. And I know I'm going to pay the price. I'm going to lose everything. And I'm going to
Yeah,
do it anyways. But then when the scene actually happens, then he goes even next level and he takes the blame for it and actually finishes the kill that Luke couldn't finish, the
yeah,
doofus. But
yep,
that was a move of love for this guy who really was kind of his enemy. He's part of the Graysons that are scummy, and he realizes, okay, you're not. You've been manipulated. You
yeah,
still have a chance. I'll do this for you. I was like, whoa,
yeah.
whoa.
This these books are heavy with that stuff, man.
Yeah.
They really are, and there are moments like that where some of these things you could read over and kind of skim over and be like, okay, that was a good scene. But like, if you really think about it, there are some really deep things in these books, and there are some scenes that, if you really think about them, they can really twist your heart quite a bit.
Well,
Uh,
just the fact that Logan gets thrown in the hole
oh yes,
and it makes him a better king.
yes,
But Brent Weeks managed to write in cannibalism in a way that we took sympathetically.
yeah,
Dude, how did you do that?
yeah,
That's rare.
yeah,
Usually that's a line that gets crossed, and now
yeah,
these aren't good people anymore. They're
right,
starting to carve their teeth sharp. They all are.
yeah,
Logan is just he did what he had to do, and
yeah.
he's a better person for it. It's like, wow, okay, that was cool.
Yeah, I love that. We definitely got to talk about the whole there was I want to go back to Kyler's love for Logan for a second, because even when even when Kyler is sitting in the prison and Logan hires I think it's Scarred Rabble to
Yes.
get him out, and Rabble's like, "Come on, man, like let's go. He got you out. Like he wants you to go." And Kyler's like, I still can't. Like, if I go, they will think I forget what his logic was exactly. It's been a while, but he was like, if I go, then Logan will be
Yep.
blamed.
I mean, the way he actually when he does kill Tara, it's very intentionally done in a way to prove that Logan is nothing, taking the whole hit, and
Yeah,
none of this is. That's what he's dedicated to.
yeah, exactly.
And he could have broke out at any time. So we talk about Christian allegories.
Yeah,
Here he is sacrificing himself,
yeah,
but one of the, uh, you know, one of the biggest hits of the trilogy
yeah,
is after he dies on the wheel
yeah,
and finds out the true cost
yes,
of when he's resurrected. And
yeah.
he should have known. He didn't know because the note got covered in blood. Way back
Yeah.
when. Wow, that
Oh,
was hard.
yeah. Were you pretty surprised by that when you found out? Did you have a
I didn't
feeling there
see it
had to be
coming. I
something?
didn't see it coming, but it made sense. There had certainly been illusion every time he was talking with the wolf, with Ezra, as he comes to find out he is, that there's a price being paid here,
Yeah,
and at first you think it's a price on the wolf. It's
yeah,
taking years off his life, or whatever's going on there. It's something he's paying. That's why he's irritated at him for being
right.
so cavalier. So you knew there's a price. Well, that
Yep.
helps explain why people keep dying.
Yeah, exactly. What What did you think about some of these other really big twists? Did they catch you off guard? There's the twist with Rat at the end of book one.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't see that coming at all.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one. There's one with finding out that Vi is Gareth or Sewell's daughter. Durzo
Mhm.
coming back. What did you think about Durzo coming back?
That one I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yay, he's not dead. It was like there's Oblin. How could it be gone at the end of the first book? Come on,
yeah,
really?
yep,
So when he came back, that felt right.
yeah,
But you certainly, it opens up so much more over time of who Durzo is. You
yeah,
don't you don't get that originally.
yeah,
He's just a wet boy. He's a
yeah,
guy's 700 years, and he's been all these characters of history. It's like, whoa. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That was a surprise.
It's crazy. And normally, I think that again, I read this when I was really young, so this was probably like my first instance of character resurrection trope. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit biased. But I feel like normally I would be like, really, they're back? Like, really, you brought your dead character back? Come on. But I feel like it really just kind of worked for this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like there was a reason for him to come back. He was making sure that he was watching out for Kyler and making
Hmm.
sure that Vi hadn't he was making sure that Vi wasn't unrepentant, I guess, for
Yep.
her ringing Kyler. And it was just that the wolf and him go way back. Him and Ezra go way back, and he's like, I'll
And
give you one more time.
Kali.
And Kali,
Kali does
yes.
as well. That you don't get to know that till way near the end of how
Yeah.
that fits in too, but
Yeah.
that's another reveal. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think about God, I'm blurring out so much. What did you think about Trace? I thought especially when I read through it this last time, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Trace was a thing. And I really wish that she had been introduced or at least mentioned earlier on.
Was she not mentioned at all earlier? Because I thought she was. Not in any way. I mean, just as a list of different people who had had different Kakaris, I
Sh-
thought
She
she had
might
been
have
mentioned.
been, but
But it was a real throwaway thing. You didn't get that it was of such significance.
yeah, I don't think that there's anything that would have led you to think that she might be a a character like a prominent character later in the book. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think there was anything really leading us in that direction. So when she that is kind of one of my very few gripes is that when she does show up, it's like, oh, okay, there's some big bad that they got to kill. And it's just, and like, it was a great big bad. Like, obviously, we knew about Kali and we knew that Kali was like this big goddess. Kali had been introduced earlier on, but then to find out that it's Trace, it's like, all right, well, I don't really care because I don't really know who Trace is. So, um, but yeah, then the other reveal at the end, at the very, very end, with Kyler's son being inside Janine. That's wild. That's
But what
oh
what was that? You froze for just a moment on that one, so I didn't catch what you
oh
said.
sorry. I just mentioned
The last reveal of
yeah,
what?
yeah, the last reveal at the very end where we find out that Kyler's son has gone into Janine and Vi
That
is
Dorian
starting.
had one last magic trick up his sleeve. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was cool.
Ooh, yeah.
And that's where give us another book. There you
Yep.
go. Tell us what happens there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It certainly leaves us on a bit of a cliffhanger. My guess would be that the next in the series will probably be about his son or the twins. We'll probably see both of them since they're both, in Janine. And my guess is that we'll see Vi trying to unravel this mystery without wanting to tell Kyler,
Uh-huh.
because it seemed like she wanted to keep it a secret at the
That
end
was her
there.
intent until she was
Yeah,
sure.
right, right.
That 100% she wants to be sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Vi. What an arc for her, from where she starts to where she ends. And, you know, in the end, I totally want the Vi Kylar coupling. I mean, I want them
Yes.
to be happy together now. That it works for me. She has earned it
Yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I told you on, one of our last recordings, I was like, "Keep an eye on Viridiana," and I'm sure it didn't, disappoint. She is easily, uh, not only my favorite character in the series, but one of my favorite fantasy characters of all time.
But,
Um,
she becomes what she is in great part because of Aline.
yes.
Aline is such a I said naive in her beliefs early on, but one thing that wasn't false back then and holds true all the way is just she is so good. At the core of her character, she's a good person.
Yeah.
And so even when she feels bad about someone, she won't let herself act on it
Right.
because that would be wrong. And she
Yeah.
doesn't want to be that kind of person. She wants to be good. She has plenty of things that have happened to her to give her every reason to turn nasty and angry and bitter, and she won't let herself do it.
Yeah.
And that's, there it's an attribute that I'd say some people just are like.
Yeah.
There are some people we meet in real life where how can you be so happy? How can you, be such a nice person with all the gunk I know has gone on in your life?
Yeah.
And that's just how some people are wired. For someone like me, I'll say, okay, that's a God thing. And in
Yeah.
this book, I'd say, well, yes, that's a God thing because she's a
Yeah.
follower of the one God. But
Yeah.
because it makes no sense
Yeah.
unless you can accept that. Some
Yeah.
people are just blessed that way.
But yeah, so Vi's character arc, what an incredible character.
Yeah.
She is at the beginning, she's so jaded and she's had this horrible life with this horrible mentor who
Oh,
has
man.
just done horrible things to her. I'm sure if I say the words, I'll get, shut off by the algorithm. But
But who wasn't excited to see Hugh Gibbet be taken
yes.
down? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
man,
And
ugh.
in the best way too. Kyler puts his cape in a some sort of grinding wheel in a boathouse, and he gets turned
Yep.
around and around, and then eventually the gears get on his head
Crunch.
and just pop his head. Oh my god, it was
It
the
was
best.
great.
It was the best death. But so she's horribly abused by this person. Basically goes into life thinking that this is just how it is. Like I just use my body in this way, and I get stuff for it, and this is how I make my way in life. And so she's had absolutely no intimacy. The one person that she has felt connected with is Jarl. She's now under compulsion to kill Jarl from the God
Yeah.
King. And that scene is one of my favorite scenes where she's there with the bow and she's looking at Jarl in the window and she's like crying. And
She doesn't want to kill him, but
yeah, she physically cannot stop herself from killing him. Um, and it happens and she kind of goes down this huge spiral, and I think that's when she runs into to Yuli. And
mhm.
Yuli is one of the things too that kind of start her, she little by little, even though she doesn't show it outwardly, she does start to care for this little girl. And even Sister Ariel says, like, I doubt she would admit it, but I think that she cares a great deal for you.
Yeah,
uh
Vi knows for herself this is out of character. Why am I not just getting rid of her? And
yeah.
she doesn't understand it. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's pegged later on
Yeah.
because you're opening up.
Yeah. And then her whole time at the chantry teaching her to be more, I guess, disciplined. Like she was disciplined in some ways as a wet boy, but the chantry is a whole nother thing. It's like teaching her how to be an adult and how to be proper and how to be, have connections with other people.
Yeah, she never gets proper though. Come on.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Never gets that far.
Yeah. um and yeah, just, and then of course everything with Aline, and this moment, where a big turning point for her is when she's at the healing hut and she's trying to figure out like, how do I get this earring off, all this stuff, and then Kyler shows up, um, and I forget exactly why Kyler was there, but he shows up and they run into each other at these magi, their healing house, and she basically gets on her knees and she hands him her sword,
Yeah, it's a
and
great scene.
she's like, whatever retribution you see fit. And I can't remember if he forgives her right then and there or if he just like lets her go, but that is like a huge turning moment for her because she does the same thing later with Aline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Aline has the dagger in her hands. And Vi is like, you have no reason to forgive me.
Yep.
Like, I will accept any punishment you see fit. I've ruined your life. And Aline hugs her and she tells her that she forgives her. And it's,
Mhm.
oh my God, that moment was so fantastic.
Although,
Um,
two things to follow up there. One, Kyler's there at the healing house because he's just gotten Logan out of the hole. So he brought
oh,
Logan
that's
there
right.
for healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing is with Aline, yeah, she forgives her. But then there's a scene later on where Aline is thinking about, oh, and still how hard it is that I
Yeah.
can't just forgive someone and then all my bad feelings about the person are gone.
Yep.
I have to keep forgiving basically.
Yep.
That- which, it makes the point.
Yeah.
It's the act of forgiveness is also the lifestyle of forgiveness.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a quote I have here, um, when that scene happens, and I think Vi is basically asking like, "How can you possibly forgive me?" And Aline says, "His mercies are new every day. If God forgives you, Vi, how dare I not?" And yeah, it's just
Hmm.
a really powerful scene. I definitely tear up at that scene every time. And I was gonna note this at the beginning, but this third book, the Beyond the Shadows, I'm pretty much crying throughout this whole book. For most of the book, I'm just crying. There's so many moments like that that are so personal and huge for these characters. And I, especially this last time I read it, I was just weeping throughout the whole thing.
There's
Uh,
so many people that you wish things ended better for,
oh yeah.
because it's like it's the Kakari behind you that keeps stealing the focus, by the way. That's a
Oh
Kakari,
yeah.
it just keeps doing that. Yeah. But, Aline sacrifice, Kyler, of course, a little earlier on the wheel, but then comes back.
Yeah.
Uh, Dorian, and the choice he makes then. Just so many people who you wish it ended better for,
Yeah.
but they do what has to be done for the good of others.
Right. Right. So there's one thing I want to ask you about before we move on to some other topics. What so the Kyler Vi Aline situation would typically
Hmm.
be considered a love triangle, right? Which is very prominent in YA fiction. A lot of people think that these books are YA. I would not say so. I don't
No.
personally think so. They have younger characters, but I don't think it quite fits into YA. But if it does, it's very, very good YA. um, so what do you think about this love triangle? Because usually for me, it would be something that I would definitely roll my eyes at.
Yeah, no, I like it. The way he takes those magical earrings and puts them in a situation where it makes sense that
Mhm.
Vi did what she did. She
Right,
knew it was wrong to do it, and yet it was the right thing to do at that moment with what she knew.
right.
So, but then there's a cost to it.
Yeah,
It works. Kylar is faithful to Aline, but feels magically compelled towards Vi. And come on, that's magnified by the fact that the two of them have some chemistry.
oh,
They
yeah.
have a lot of background in common. They have a lot of skill talent in common.
Yeah.
He has more in common with Vi than he does with Aline.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it makes sense that there'd be some tug, but then
Yeah.
his heart is really Aline's.
Yeah.
So and Vi does not try to actively steal Kylar away.
Right.
She's not going to do that. Now, I was looking on Goodreads, which can be a cesspool sometimes of people just spewing hate when they don't like something, but
Yeah.
I post reviews on things from time to time, and I always rate the books. Looking at the Night Angel trilogy, I was just shaking my head at the people who don't like it.
Oh, yeah.
And I've even put this on Twitter already. Most people do. They're very highly rated, but consistently the people who seem not to like it are the ones who feel like the emphasis on being a virgin still and not just feeling we should just screw everybody we want to,
Mm.
that's just unrealistic and stupid. I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I mean, in certain
Some people
communities,
have that kind of character, and the
yeah.
fact that there are people out there who think that is sadly unrealistic, well, that disappoints me. It's
Yeah.
like you're listening to the wrong people then, because
Right.
no, you don't have to go and bang everybody you meet, okay?
Yeah.
You don't. So the fact that they're trying not to and trying to wait till marriage and all that, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
okay. But then I'll take it the next level. Brent Weeks does use it just as part of the element of humor as well in the story.
Yeah.
I mean, Logan at one point, he also, for
Yeah.
well into it, is still a virgin and is like,
Yeah.
and I can't believe I'm still a virgin. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
it's just a device as well that Brent Weeks uses to add an element of humor in there. It didn't bother me. Some people find that annoying. I did not at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think that that worked really well because you have Eileen who is kind of this young Christian girl, and then you have Vi who is the complete opposite. Basically I mean she prays to the god of semen, blood, and water. So they really couldn't be more different. But like we said, we do get this amazing redemption arc for Vi, but it's redemption in a way where she doesn't turn into Eileen. She doesn't turn
No.
into this God fearing woman, but she does become someone who can who can love and be loved.
Hmm.
And I think that that is the most important thing about her character, because the circumstances of her the circumstances of her rape when she was young leaves her with only physical fulfillment, and she can't even really get that. But in a relationship, it leaves her with only the physical parts and none of the intimacy.
Hmm.
And with the ring rape that she did to Kyler, it leaves him with all of the intimacy, or all of the intimacy and none of the physical stuff that goes along with that. And
Yeah.
so they're almost like this perfect yin and yang where she's very physical in her affection and he's very intimate on like an emotional level. And I just love the way those characters fit together so much.
Yeah. Vi has become a new person when they get to that point in the story when she learns what she can do with the earrings so
Yeah.
that Kyler can be intimate finally with Aline.
Yes.
And that she, of course, learns after the fact that she's still going to experience everything he feels,
Yeah.
but that she's just going to still endure that
Yeah.
and never say anything about it.
Yep.
She's putting someone else's needs completely ahead of her own.
Yeah.
That is a huge milestone for her.
Yeah. And I think that that is a huge because Kyler doesn't know about it. Only Aline knows about this. And I think that that is a huge connection for her and Aline as well. And I think that it's one of the major things that leads Aline at the end when she's dying, which I definitely want to talk about. When Aline is dying, she says, you two take care of each other. Like you have my blessing to be together. I want you guys to be together. And I think that that was like a major stepping stone in that direction where she's kind of like, I'm gonna be gone in a few minutes. Like, I want to make sure, like, I love both of you guys as much as terrible as this whole situation is. Like, could you imagine being her in that situation? Like how could you give your blessing to this other woman who's gonna, she knows she's gonna come in and be the new Aline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be the
Mm-hmm.
new girlfriend or wife or whatever.
But you said
Like,
Aline
oh,
is motivated by love. That's who
yes.
she is, and she has come to love both of them in different ways,
Yeah.
but to truly want what's best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, these characters are so good, Jim. They're so good.
I do wonder though, are there some women who read this who go, I got to get me one of those earring sets
I
cuz
know.
man, that would yeah.
I know. I know. If only.
I mean the thought that your man can't even if he tries anything.
Yeah.
I was like that was funny.
Yeah, that was great. Um, so would you rather go into in this conversation, would you rather go into the world building or the magic system, or would you like to explore some of these other characters? What are you feeling right now?
Oh goodness. I think the magic would be the most interesting of that.
Yes. Okay. What was your
Yeah.
favorite part of that?
Well, the magic is very different. There's really three different levels, I think, of what we see.
Yeah.
There's people that learn regular magic, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
and then the veer, which
Oh
is kind
yeah.
of the darker evil magic that apparently has been empowered. And then there's talent.
Yeah.
The wet boys that have just some innate, natural magical ability. Like
Yeah.
it's an essence of themselves.
Yeah.
And then of course the Kakari is a whole nother part of magic that flows from real magic, but has been endowed with special abilities and sentience over the years even.
Yeah.
Um it's cool, the different layers, and they follow their own rules. I found it very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think my favorite is I feel like I never quite understood how the wet boy talent was different than like the weaves and like the other like main magic system. Maybe I'll pick it up in the next reread. But I really liked the Kakari. I've always liked this idea of having like this sentient thing that provides you with magic in a lot of different ways. And if you liked the way that worked, and if you liked just kind of this story in general, I highly recommend the Fallen Blade series by Kelly McCullough. I know that he was very inspired by this magic system and this
Mm.
story. The main character is an assassin who doesn't have a Kakari, but he has a sentient shadow that provides him with magic. And so it's very similar. Like it can cloud him in shadow and stuff like that.
I
Um,
enjoyed how the Kakari seemed to have almost limitless abilities,
yeah.
and the only thing holding Kylar back with it was his lack of imagination.
Yes.
And then it comes up again and again, I
Yeah.
could have done this for you. You
Like
could
the
have just
eyedropper.
yeah, or like you could have just put me all around you and walked right through those people,
Yep.
and he just
Yep.
doesn't think of it. Well, yeah.
Right.
The bit when he loses his hand, and
Yes.
how you could have
Oh,
done that different. Yeah.
dude, why is a character losing their hand always, why does it always work? It always works. Luke Skywalker, I'm sure there's a million
There,
other ones.
now I'm a zombie apocalypse fan. It
Yeah.
doesn't always work. Sometimes they're too late.
That's true. That's true.
But
But
yeah, I sensed a difference between the wet boy talent and the regular magic, in that magic was something you had to train yourself on how to do. You're learning basically how to magically cast spells in a
yeah.
sense. Wet boys don't do that. They don't cast spells. They learn how to use their talent. It's
Yeah.
like instead of mentally learning an ability, they're exercising their talent.
Right.
That's why you train and you become
Right.
more skilled at what you just can naturally do. And that was a key
Yeah.
thing. A wet boy, you could only be a wet boy if you had a talent.
Right.
If you had talent. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say a talent, but if you had talent, that
Right.
was the difference between a wet boy and assassin. Primary difference. Wet
Yeah.
boys have a talent, but you can't learn a talent. You
Right.
have it or
Or you
you
don't.
don't.
Yeah. um yeah, and then the weaves, so the main magic system was kind of interesting because it's quite a bit it's a much softer magic system than we see in a lot of modern fantasy. It doesn't really go into like how exactly it works besides like the parts of the body that are working together to produce the magic.
Mhm.
But I kind of liked that because I'm finding I think the older I get, the more I like soft magic systems and just kind of this idea of like anything can happen and we don't really know exactly how it works. And so I enjoy the weaves in these books quite a bit as well.
Okay.
All right, so let's go into we can talk about characters or just some of our favorite moments. I have a couple quotes. What do you feel like?
I think we definitely hit some of our favorite moments already.
Yeah.
Some really good things that had happened all through here that we just couldn't help ourselves jumping to and talking
Oh yeah,
about.
for sure. There is one quote from I missed it earlier when we were on the topic of it, but we were talking about how Eileen kind of had this transformation from being very law focused into more accepting and understanding of who Kyler is. And there's this really great quote from her that says, I think it's in the third book. It might even be, I think it's when they meet up at the Chantry. And
Okay.
she says, "You couldn't give up retribution because you are retribution, Kyler. You changed that shopkeeper girl's life, Capricia.
Yes.
You gave her what she deserves as much as when you kill bad men and give them what they deserve. The fact is, I made my God look a lot like me rather than the other way around."
Yep.
And
That's that growth she shows. Absolutely.
yeah,
You know, another moment, and I don't have a quote written down for it, but a moment that was really significant and moving was in the hole when Logan, it's out. He's not just king, oh, he's the king. He's Logan. Okay, Logan Gyre and Lily when he pardons her.
yes.
You
Oh,
know, and how that pays off later.
yeah.
Holy cow,
Bet he didn't see that one coming.
all he knew is she's gone now,
Yeah.
while he's stuck down at the bottom there.
Yeah.
Um, but the fact that he knew we're just all in the hole here, but I am expunging all guilt you have for anything you have done ever.
Yeah.
And she's just in tears, that
Yeah.
it's a moving thing for her. It means something to her that someone would do that. She's like, "You don't know what I've done." He said, "Doesn't matter. It's all
Yep.
gone."
Yep.
Wow.
Wow. What
And then
what
the
an what
dividend
an
it pays
allegory.
when she's been turned into, what do they call those things? A
Ferali, I
fair
think. Ferali.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When she's actually the core of that thing,
Yeah.
and they're able to turn the tide because of that, and what he had done for her. Wow.
Yeah. I love Logan as a character so much. I think that he's certainly one of my top three favorites.
Yeah.
And there's even that moment when Kyler comes to save him to get him out of the hole, and they have to leave Nasher behind.
Yeah.
And he gets him through the water, he gets him past the big dragon,
Yep.
and Kyler is kind of like, should we just go? Like, should we just keep going? And Logan's like, he thinks about it for a minute and he's like, no, he's like, I gave Nasher my word that
Mhm.
I would get him out of there. He's been loyal to me. I have to go get him.
Yep.
And the response from Kyler, he is so devoted to Logan, not only as his friend, but as his king, that he's like, that's all you had to say. There's no
Yep.
argument from Kyler.
Right.
There's no, well, what about he's like, if that's the word you're giving, that's, the deed I'm performing,
Yep.
basically.
And Logan plays true as a character in that, and he says it at one point. Um, he's gonna do what he knows is the right thing to do, no matter what it's gonna cost him.
Yeah.
And that it's worth continuing to do that because he's seen the results are what he wants to see happen. Even though he's been through hard things, the end result is always better if he does what's right.
Right.
And the final payoff with Lily is, proof,
Yeah.
absolute evidence of his belief being true for him. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mama K, we haven't said much about her.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I'd love to talk a little bit more about her.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
the reveal that she's not just the mistress of pleasures, but she's the head of the Sakage.
Yeah.
She's the one behind the scenes for all these years, for so long.
Yeah.
Um, and that eventually, she makes her play in the end, that she's
Yeah.
going to get out. She's going to go legit. She's going to work with Logan, and we're going to break the Sakage. And he kind of like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Smart
And
lady, though. Really smart lady.
yeah, she's fantastic. There's a lot of great moments because these characters are so complicated, and sometimes you feel like, oh, like this character is like a complete dirtbag, and then in the next book they have some sort of like redemption, or they spiral further or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Mama K at the end of that first book, because she kind of flips on Durzo, because she thinks, if I can remember correctly, she's trying to protect Uli, and she believes the way to do that is for Durzo to die. I can't remember the exact situation, but I remember that's the basics of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she pits Durzo against Kyler, and she knows one of them is gonna come out on top, and it'll probably be Kyler. And so then Kyler goes back to Mama K in the end, and he sticks her with whatever that poison is, and he's
Yep.
like, here's the antidote.
Right.
He's like, and this is mercy. And he's like, you can choose to either die in a horrific way, or you can take this antidote and live. And from that moment on, Mama K became a much more favorite character of mine. And then in the end, we find out that she is to be the next ruler of Scenaria, because now Logan is the High King, so he's ruling over
Yep.
all of Mid Cryo, and then Mama K,
She's come up in the world.
yeah, she's come up a big. What'd you think about Dorian?
I really enjoyed Dorian. Uh, when we first meet him, we're not entirely sure what's going on. He's got these prophecies and stuff, but then we get to see more and more of him over time. Um, and then he ends up, before he ends up, that he does take over ruling, that he never wanted to do, but he does it. It's for the best, try to fix the wrongs of his father. But when he gets way near the end and then finally realizes, I've pretty much become the things I didn't that my father did.
Yeah,
I've accomplished the things he wanted to do,
yeah,
and then realizes I have to rip away from this.
yeah, because
Knowing he's gonna lose his sanity.
yeah,
That's what it's gonna take. It's like, ooh, again, sacrifice.
yeah, because he's trying to use evil power for good, and 9 times out of 10, that's just not gonna work out, right?
Right. Right.
And so we see this slow decline in that third book of him, just kind of little by little, like, I'm just gonna make this one decision, like I'm just gonna make this one
Mm-hmm.
thing. And he doesn't have his power of prophecy at that point anymore,
Right.
because he ripped it out of him, so he can't
Yep.
see that what he's doing is going to have these major ramifications.
Yeah. Yeah.
um And so it's just this really sad downward spiral. I A lot of people really don't like this, but I actually really liked his relationship with Janine.
Oh
Although
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
although it was like, obviously we see that it's just not working out for whatever reason. But I like this idea of, having this prophecy and seeing this perfect life with this woman, and him falling in love with her through his prophecy, and then finally getting to the point in real life where he gets to meet her and live out that prophecy. And
Mhm.
I love the idea behind that. It's very romantic, but then in the act of acting that, like, in the act of living that out, it just goes downhill so fast, and
You
it's
gotta
it's
give
really sad.
Janine props as a character, though.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
she surpasses everybody's expectations again and again throughout the series.
Yeah.
What she's willing to do, how she's choosing to be, and she late in the third book, she verbalizes it very clearly, you know, uh, seeing well, it was maybe halfway through the third book where she explains, how her mom could have been so powerful, chose not to, and chose to be weak,
Yeah.
and it hurt everybody. It hurt her, it hurt so many people, and I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to face the hard things. I'm going to be a part of that. So she looks at the people she's grown up seeing, and she's choosing to be better, to be different, and to do the hard things. Um, Good for her,
Yeah.
She was willing that's why she was willing to get together with Logan. Well, I mean, she was kinda hot for him too,
Yeah.
but still, "Hey, I'm gonna get married. We've not dated or anything, but sure. Hey, let's do this."
Yeah.
She was game for whatever, and
Yeah.
all the different things that she went through then, she was resilient.
Yes.
That's a good word for her,
Yeah.
resilient. She had grit.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a really fantastic queen, and I imagine that she's gonna be a really great queen in the next book if we see her when, with Logan.
Mhm. High
Um,
queen.
High Queen. But yeah, we saw her do a lot of like really great stuff in Calidor. And one of the moments I always look back on with her is when Dorian's in his tent and he's all like messed up in his headspace, and the guy comes to the tent flap and he's like, "I need to speak to Dorian." She's like, "You'll speak to me."
That's right. That's
and
right.
and he's like, I just she's like, "Do you not are you not accustomed to speaking to a queen?" And like, just really, she just has
Yep.
she grows up so much and just becomes this really like really just empowered queen
Yeah.
that
And
doesn't.
in that scene, she senses when the guy finally leaves that he's actually like relieved,
Yeah. Oh,
to
yeah.
see that she's being what they need
Yeah.
from a leader like that. That was cool.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's wrap up with some of
Yeah, we've
our
we've covered stuff really well here, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's wrap up with a couple favorite moments. Are there any that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure you mention, like, I really like this scene or anything?
We didn't talk a lot about the initial time where Kylar and Durzo go at it, and
Yeah.
Durzo ends up dying, but that's a great scene.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when Gareth Osul gets taken out,
Yeah.
uh, that's a good scene. You know, all around good stuff.
Yeah. My
Uh,
my favorite scene that I get teary-eyed at every single time is at the very end, where everyone, they're all trying to fight like this big darkness, and all these characters that we've been reading for 3 books that we've spent so much time with, they're all in the same place putting all
mhm,
of their power together
yep.
on this sword. And it's just such a beautiful moment because it's described in music, I guess. Like, everyone's like, it says, Solon found his pitch first, a bass as deep as his speaking voice, wide
Yes,
and
yes.
strong, oceanic. Sister Ariel matched him, a powerful mezzo, broad but sharper. Then the Magi joined in a chorus of baritones and basses. The Magi settled over them, fine and feminine, adding depth and complexity. Vi joined in, her talent like a high note with a rapid vibrato, higher than any of the others could possibly go. Then a startling new voice joined, richer than any of the
Durzo!
others, layered in mystery, a baritone with such depth and range it dwarfed all the others. It's Durzo putting his hand on the thing.
Uh-huh.
And then Kyler felt his place. He sang a tenor, soaring over the other men, interweaving with Vi. He himself was startled at the power of his voice and noticed that all eyes had turned to him, as odd as they had been when Durzo joined. And then we get this really great moment where it says, through the euphony, Kyler noticed something else suffusing the whole. It was hope. And that voice, if voice it could be called, was all Eileen. Her hope, even as she was dying, drew forth hope from each of them. And with that revelation, Kyler saw that Kurok wasn't a simple tool of magic. It wasn't an amplifier of talent. Kurok amplified the whole man.
Mhm.
And dude, just that whole
That's
that
beautiful writing right there.
oh my gosh, man.
Yeah.
The prose in that scene, it literally brings me to tears every time, just because not because it's particularly sad or anything, but it's just a beautiful moment of all of these pieces, all of these things that we have come to love over
Mhm.
3 books, all come together at the same time. And it's just like, just everybody unite and all their
Yeah.
power is in the same place. And it's just this big explosion. Just what an incredible way to end the book. I sincerely believe that this is my favorite finale of any series that I've read,
Okay.
and just the way, just what an epic way to wrap up this 3rd book, and then for Kyler to go off with Ezra. And the audiobook narrator did such a good job during this dream with Ezra, where Ezra is basically crying and he's like, Eileen left all these flowers for you, and she, remade all of this whole land.
Mhm.
And oh my god.
Tulips, tulips everywhere.
Yeah, it's just an incredibly beautiful scene. And we do find out during that scene that Kali and Trace were not the big head honcho that we thought they were, and that there is another Dark Lord somewhere out there. So he's setting up all these
Next
things
book.
for the
There you
next books.
go.
And yeah, I just cannot wait to get to it. I can't wait to find out about the next Dark Lord. I can't wait to find out about Kyler's kiddo. And more than anything, I am just a Kyler and Vi stan, and I I just want to see them together and
I'm
happy.
in for
That's
that.
that's
Yep.
all I want.
Power couple. Let's go.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, that's pretty much everything I have. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you would specifically be looking forward to finding out in the next book, or any questions you had?
Nothing beyond what we've talked about.
Yeah.
I'm just since I got into content creating back in end of 2020,
Uh,
I've learned of so many good books that are out here that I just hadn't caught, hadn't noticed.
yeah.
And this is just another one of them that now it was on my radar. I got to read it and it's just so good. And there's so much rich fantasy and sci-fi content that's been written over the last 10, 15 years. Uh, I'm enjoying it and always looking forward to see what's going to be the next Night Angel trilogy or whatever, so many reveals. So I'm just going to keep plowing along, see what else I can find. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
It is really fantastic when you find one of those books or series where it is that feeling of, how have I never read this before? Like,
Yeah.
how have I been living without this story in my head, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so yeah, I
This one
I
does not disappoint.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you liked it. And thank you so much for joining me
Absolutely.
tonight. This was a super fun impromptu podcast we did for this.
Gave
I'm
me a chance to
always
debrief on it right
yeah.
after I've read it, and that's just fun to do for
Yeah,
sure.
that was a great feeling seeing the Twitter post like I'm reading Night Angel and me just like we have to talk about it. All right, guys. Well, we are going to wrap it up there, but thank you so much for joining us for another look at the Night Angel trilogy. If you'd like to support us, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy for more SFF related meanderings. Be sure to also check out the Fantasy for the Ages podcast that Jim hosts with his son, Zach. I'll have all that linked below as always. And we gotta get Zach on this podcast sometime.
Absolutely. So they if they haven't seen any of ours yet, they may think he's just a shadow figure
I
and not a
know.
real Zach. But
I know.
there really is.
He's just a cardboard cutout you put in the chair next to you. I'm not sure what episodes are going to be coming up next for our channel, but stay tuned for more Creators Corner episodes that are new, as well as some fun book discussions with some of our other author friends. And until next time, if there's anything we've learned from Durzo, it's that it's perfectly fine for your life not to work out how you planned. Just rearrange your face a bit, change your name, and start a new one. Good night, everybody.